Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to another book chat. I've now started this about 5 times, and I had a really good idea where I was going to show you the flowers because there's some awesome flowers in the garden, but then realised I couldn't actually switch the video around midway through, and so that didn't work. So we're just going to talk about books because that's just easier. And I have plenty of books to talk about this month because I've actually been having a reading afternoon, maybe not once a week, but we're getting there. So I have read more than just a very small handful, and I haven't even really had many did not finishes, which is pretty good going for me. So we'll start with Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. Now I picked this up just out of a bargain bin at sort of the local shop. And I've heard about that there's a TV series and that sort of thing, and this is obviously the TV series cover, but I hadn't really heard much else about it. Now, I used to really enjoy Lovecraft when I was sort of in my teens, I guess, or something like that, but it is difficult to read, and the older I get, the more difficult I find it to read because the racism in it is just so rampant and off-putting, and once you're really aware of it, you can't not be aware of it. So yeah, I definitely don't enjoy it as much as I did. So what's really fun is reading books which are using his mythos and counteracting it at the same time, and this is fantastic. So yeah, it's almost more like a selection of, with longer than short stories. It's almost a selection of novellas that all tie together into one long narrative. It switches points of view between them, and it is sequential, but there's jumps in time. But it's really, really good. So in all revolves around this one family who run the Safe Negro Travel Guide, which is, to be honest, the fact that that was required is more terrifying than most of the other scary things in the book. But there's this beautiful dual menace of the racism of the times because it's set in the 1950s, and also this sort of lurking eldritch horror, which is also controlled, or is attempted to be controlled by a lot of old white guys, basically. And I thought it was excellent. It was well written. It was interesting. There was some really good humour through it as well. And it was inventive. It wasn't just retreading the same old Lovecraft stories. It took it and moved everything around in a slightly different direction. So yeah, I thought it was excellent. Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. Definitely recommend it. Pick it up and have a read. I realise I haven't really given a synopsis of it, but I don't want to give too much away. General setup is that the first character that you come across, he is descended from one of these sort of high priests of the Lovecraftian mythos sort of thing. And so they're kind of the council of elders are trying to get him in so that they can use him, and obviously he is resisting, and it goes on from there. There we go. Next paperback before you on to the Kindles, Christopher Moore, Fool. Love Christopher Moore. Years and years ago I picked up Practical Demon Keeping was the first one I picked up, which is the first of his Pine Cove books. Absolutely love them. All this Pine Cove stuff's great. They're my favourites of his. But yeah, pretty much everything of his I've read, I've enjoyed. Fool, I'd actually tried to read before, and it's a rewriting of King Lear, basically. And I was just like, not sure. Yeah, I didn't really finish it, but I saw it the other day, same thing. It was in a second-hand shop. I was like, I'm just going to pick it up and try it. And it was good. It was not his best, but it was quite well done, and the character of the Fool was really good in the end. It's super bawdy, basically, to use the language that it uses, but it's well done. It is well done. But yeah, be prepared for quite a lot of crudity if that sort of thing bothers you. And yes, I wouldn't use it as your introduction to Christopher Moore if you haven't read his before, because he has got better books in my mind. Next one, Welcome to Nowhere by Queve MacDonald. And I went and looked up that name to make sure I was pronouncing it right. So this one, I can't remember where I picked it up. I read ages ago, I read some of his bunny stories ages and ages ago. I was kind of like, yeah, quite good. sort of thing. But then I read his Stranger Times, absolutely loved it, and was like, right, we've got to go and revisit. So picked this one up. So bizarre. So bizarre. It was a good story. It was kind of one of those ones where at several points in it you're just sitting there going, what is going on? This has just got so bizarre. There's a whole they end up in this whole sort of Mad Max standoff in the desert with, then there's an orangutan, and it was very strange. But if you want something that's funny, action packed, and yeah, well written. My one thing with Queeve McDonald's, I do find his dialogue not great sometimes, but you get into the story, and it just doesn't really bother you that much. So Welcome to Nowhere by Queeve McDonald. Yeah, fun read. Do have to go back and reread the old ones that I read before. Um, okay. Oh, slow Kindle. A Heart in the Right Place by Heidi Goody and Ian Grant. Now, generally speaking, I like their work. They're easy, they're readable, they're pretty off the wall, generally speaking. Other than their new Doggerland series, they tend to have a supernatural slant on them. Odd Jobs have been my favourite so far. It's essentially a bureau that's tasked not with stopping the end of the world from all of the eldritch monstrosities that are descending. It's going to start in Birmingham, poor Birmingham. But yeah, rather than trying to stop the end of the world, they're just tasked with making it run with as little bureaucratic fuss as possible, which I really enjoyed. Having said that, I've only read the first one in the series. I seem to do that with them. I'll pick up the first one and then I don't seem to carry on. But that was really fun read. I like Cloven Hoof. I've liked quite a lot of what I've read of theirs. So this one, A Heart in the Right Place, it was a werewolf one. Yeah. um, it was good. I almost put it down in the first few chapters because it was really just over the top, kind of gross and violent. And I was like, this isn't really working for me. I don't really like this, but I had enough faith in them to push on, and the story was good. It's a son takes his father off for his father's dying, and he takes him off for a lovely weekend in the Highlands where they're going to drink whiskey and do fatherly son things. And Dad's not so keen on this, but the son thinks this is the thing that they're going to be doing, and because things never run smoothly, he unfortunately gets caught up with. He ends up with a body in the boot of his car, and that body is being pursued by some very, very scary assassins because they need the heart, because the body actually belongs to a werewolf. That probably kind of gave stuff away a bit there, but it's pretty obvious. So I don't think I gave anything away. And chaos ensues. And it does improve. It's still a bit over the top gross in places, but yeah, it was still a good read. Heart in the Right Place, Heidi Goody and Ian Grant. Go in with complete suspension of belief. Just as hint. Okay. We're getting there. Margaret Atwood, The Edible Woman. Now, I have to admit, I've actually not read a lot of Margaret Atwood. I sort of came late to her. And yeah, she's always, everything I've read of hers, she is just a really good writer. And this one was interesting. It was sort of, nothing really happens, but a lot happens, if that makes sense. It's not like a big dramatic story full of lots of action or anything like that. There's not a big mystery. It's merely a young woman she's engaged, she's getting married, and the sense of disassociation because she's just following what is expected by society. And she has some fantastic turns of phrase in here, which are just wonderful. And the end is both sort of expected a little bit. You can see it coming, but the actual way it happens is completely unexpected. So that makes no sense at all. But very good. If you hadn't read The Edible Woman, read The Edible Woman. And one last one. I know by lots of people's standards, this is actually not a lot of reading from it, but for me, for how I've been going recently, it's really good. So one final one, which is really taking its time to open. Yes. Okay. Marrying Off Mother and Other Stories by Gerald Durrell, or I always pronounce it wrong. Always love his work, really do. We watched the TV series The Durrells or the Durrells or whatever. We watched that a few months ago, and I'd actually recently reread all of his Corfu trilogy, and it is just fantastic. It's just lovely and fun, and he has this beautiful. See if I can find it in here. It's in the introduction, which just sort of sums up his work. Yeah. All of these stories are true, or to be strictly accurate, some are true, some have a kernel of truth and a shell of embroidery. Some were my own experiences, others were told to me, and I appropriated them for my own purposes, which bears out the saying, never talk to an author if you don't want to appear in print. Which of these stories is true, and which is semi-true, I have, of course, not the slightest intention of telling you, but I hope this will not detract from your enjoyment of them. And it just sums up his writing perfectly, because you read it and you go, well, that can't possibly have happened. But it guess some version of it probably did. But yeah, so that was an awesome read. So if you do like his stories, yes, some of the language is a bit dated, but the stories themselves are told well, and there's certainly no ill feeling in any of it, even when the language kind of makes you go. So yeah, they are a good read, but just do bear that in mind. And that has been my reading. And I almost thought I heard the Tuies, but I'm not sure now because I was talking. No, see, now they've gone completely quiet. This is what always happens. I come out, I say, oh, the Tuies are here. And now they're being really quiet. Guarantee as soon as I shut the camera off, then they'll be off. No, they definitely stopped. Okay, over to you, lovely people. What have you been reading? Have you read any of these? What are your thoughts on them? What's one thing that you've been trying to capture recently on camera and print, anything like that, that just keeps getting away on you? Such as Tuies. Let me know below. And yeah, happy reading, and we'll see you next. See, they're going again, but now it's so quiet that I know the camera's not going to pick it up. They know. They know. Yeah. No. Until next time, see you then. Bye, lovely people.